The next time you pull into a drive-thru, you're probably not thinking about what the meat looks like under a microscope, but after today, you just might. Today, we're putting McDonald's, Wendy's, and Burger King under the microscope because if you're spending your money on fast food, you deserve to know what's actually in the meat. But before we even started, something happened that I definitely wasn't expecting. By the end of this video, we'll see how tiny aquatic organisms reacted to each burger, and trust me, you won't believe what this little guy looks like at 400 times magnification. Let's get started. Before we start looking under the microscope, I wanted to make this test as fair as possible. I bought all 3 burgers on the same day and prepared each one exactly the same. From this point on, there's simply sample A, sample B, and sample C. I won't reveal which burger is which until the very end, you guys. That way, we're judging what we actually see under the microscope, not the name on the wrapper. Then, we'll introduce extracts from each burger to a tiny aquatic organisms to see if they react any differently. All right, let's start with sample A. Let's go. Here we are at 40 times magnification, and this is our first look at sample A. And right away, you can see that we're not looking at the same solid piece of meat. The lighter colored areas are likely cooked muscle tissue, while the darker shiny sections are pockets of rendered fat and also moisture. So at this magnification, we're really just getting the big picture. To see how this burger is actually put together, we're going to need to zoom in. All right, here we are 100 times, and as we zoom in, you guys, you can really start to appreciate how meat is put together. You see those brighter shiny areas? They're mostly rendered fat and moisture reflecting from the microscope's light, while the darker areas are the cooked meat itself. The one thing a lot of people don't realize is that fat isn't just there for flavor, so as it melts during cooking, it helps keep the meat juicy. That's why the way it's distributed throughout the burger can make a big difference in how it tastes and feels when you take a bite. So far, sample A looks pretty consistent, but let's see how it compares to sample B. Let's go. All right, here's sample B, you guys, and honestly, this one caught my eye right away. Compared to sample A, it looks smoother, and I'm seeing a lot more of these tiny, shiny pockets spread across the surface. That's mostly rendered fat reflecting the light from the microscope. One thing I've learned doing these experiments is that your eyes miss a lot. Sitting on the table, these burgers looked almost the same. Under the microscope, though, they each start telling their own story. So let's zoom in and take a closer look. So here's sample B at 100 times, and right away I'm noticing these larger pockets of fat compared to sample A. That's completely normal after cooking because the fat melts and starts moving through the meat. It's just something you never get to see unless you throw a burger under the microscope. And so far, both burgers definitely have their own look, but we've still got one more sample to check out. Let's go. Okay, here it is, sample C at 40 times magnification. Compared to the first 2 burgers, this one has a much more even look to it. I'm not seeing as many of those larger pockets of fat that stood out in sample B. Instead, everything looks a little more uniform across the surface. It's interesting because if you put all 3 burgers next to each other, they don't look all that different. But once you start zooming in, each one begins to develop its own fingerprint. Let's move in a little closer and see what 100 times reveals. So here we are, and compared to the first 2 burgers, this one still has a much more even look to it. I'm not seeing those larger pockets of fat like we saw in sample B. Instead, the fat looks more spread throughout the entire sample. And you can also see these darker areas that formed as a burger cooked. One thing I've noticed while making these videos is that foods that look almost identical on your plate can start looking completely different once you put them under the microscope. And that's exactly why I love doing these comparisons. Now that we've looked at these 3 burgers under the microscope, let's see how Rotifers hold up to these 3. The microscope showed us what each burger looked like, but I wanted to see what happened when something living was introduced to each one. So I exposed live Rotifers to an extract from each burger. I was curious to see if their behavior would change. Let's take a look. If you've never seen a rotifer before, you're in for a treat. Rotifers are tiny freshwater animals that have been around for hundreds of millions of years. Even though they're microscopic, they're surprisingly complex. They use these spinning wheel-like structures on their heads to pull food into their mouths. And when conditions get tough, some species can actually shrink into a dormant state to help survive until things improve. They're fascinating little creatures, and because they're so active under the microscope, they're perfect for observing how they respond to changes in their environment. So here we go. Here's sample A's rotifer, and I'm going to introduce the solution on the right side. So it's going to be moving from the right to the left. So watch everything change, and let's look at the Rotifer's reaction to sample A. And there it is right there, guys. How I did this was I took some meat from sample A and distilled water and kind of like mixed it all together and made a solution. He's not doing too bad here. You can see him kind of moving around a little bit, but he's still foraging, he's still eating, which is a good sign. Let me zoom in a little bit. So yeah, I mean, I don't see him curling up in a ball, which is his #1 defense mechanism, so he's doing pretty good. Let's move over to sample B and see how he does. Okay, here he is. Let's see how sample B takes on the solution. Same thing on the right side. You guys will see it pretty soon, so here it comes. Let's watch his reaction. And boom, there it is. You see it? Okay, he starts to react. He's moving into a little ball, and there he is. He's in a ball. So what does this tell you about sample B? Okay, I'm not sure what's going on, but he does not like his environment, and he is remaining in this ball for a while. Let's go check out sample C. Look at this, guys. Okay, here's sample C. I'm gonna hit this guy from left to right, so watch you guys. There it is. Let's watch his reaction. And let me focus for you real quick. It gets kind of real. I hit him really good too, so. All right, he knows his environment changed. He's squirming around a little bit. Let's see what he does. Will he go into a ball like sample B? Let's take a look here. He's still squirming. He knows something's changed. He's moving around, looking for a different area, location. So I followed this guy for 10 minutes on the slide here, and all he did was like just squirm around and looking for a different location, but he did not go into a ball like sample B. So, all right, so it looks like we covered the Rotifer test. Now, what y'all been waiting for, let's check out this fly and that I caught trying to steal some of the hamburger when I was taking samples. Check this out. Well, remember that unexpected visitor I mentioned earlier? Right in the middle of filming, this housefly landed on one of the burgers like he was ready for lunch. So I figured, you know what? If you're gonna invite yourself into my experiment, you might as well become part of it. So before we reveal which burger won, let's take a closer look at our uninvited guest. So take a look at the fly's stomach. Those tiny hairs covering its body aren't just for looks. They help the fly detect changes in its surroundings, including air movement and physical contact. So now we're moving up to the head. So this is where things get crazy, but flies rely heavily on their vision, and most of what you're seeing here is taken up by one enormous compound eye. So check this out right here. I saw something move, and it's his stomach, and there's something moving inside. Check it out, man. It's crazy. I don't know if it's breathing or what's going on, but do you guys see that? That's pretty cool. So I sped up a little bit to actually see more movement. So yeah, check it out. This is the very end of the fly's abdomen, and it may not look like much, but this is where several important functions happen. Flies breathe through tiny openings along their bodies, and muscles in the abdomen help move air through the respiratory system. If this happened to be a female, this is also the end of the body where eggs would be laid. What really caught my attention, though, was that these tiny muscles were still pulsing under the microscope. So here's a fly's eyes, and this is at 100 times. So I'm gonna zoom in to 400 times and take a look at this, you guys. So now this is amazing. What looks like one big eye is actually made up of thousands of tiny lenses packed together like a honeycomb. Each one captures a small piece of the world around it, and together they help the fly detect movement incredibly well. That's why it's so hard to catch these guys, but not this one. I got him. So take a look at this, his foot. Those tiny claws help it grab onto rough surfaces. It also has sticky pads that let it walk across smooth surfaces like glass, or apparently my burger. And one last look at 40 times for this compound eye. Okay, enough of this guy. Let's go see who won the burger war. Let's do this. Sorry. All right, it's time to reveal the burgers. After comparing all three samples, I kept coming back to one burger. Based on the overall structure of the meat, the consistency, and what I observed under the microscope, I think Wendy's had the strongest showing in today's comparison. Its structure appeared the most natural to me, with a more even balance between the meat and rendered fat. Burger King was a close second. It had a very consistent appearance, but overall, I still preferred what I saw in the Wendy's sample. McDonald's looked noticeably different. The meat appeared more compact with larger pockets of rendered fat throughout the whole sample. Now, there was one thing that really surprised me during the Rotifer test. McDonald's was the only burger that produced an obvious change in behavior. That doesn't prove it's healthier or unhealthier, and it certainly doesn't tell us why. I thought it was a very interesting observation worth sharing. At the end of the day, this isn't about proving one burger is perfect. It's about taking something we eat all the time and seeing it from a perspective most of us will never experience. And honestly, that's why I love doing these experiments. Oh, check out this video. I introduced Takis and other chips to the Rotifers, and you'll see their reaction. Thank you for watching. Be good to yourself and others.